love me zone.
Actor, director, and Ivy League professor Christopher Bays has contributed to the funny side of the theatrical arts. His specialty is in teaching the acting forms of clown and commedia dell'arte, a traditional Italian form of performance that incorporates masks, improvisation, and comedic sketches. Throughout his career, Bays has been teaching the art of physical theater, a genre that tells stories through physical movement. He was a professor of physical acting at the Julliard School for 25 years and is now the head of physical acting at the Yale School of Drama. His students include Academy Award-winning actors such as Mahershala Ali, Lupita Nyong'o, and the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. Bays has also taught many classes and workshops around the world, directed numerous stage performances, and has done movement choreography for Broadway shows like Alfred Hitchcock's The 39 Steps.
Thank you very much. Hey, pretty good for first day.
In 2016, Bays began teaching in Asia when he traveled to Beijing to teach clown workshops to Chinese students. In 2017, Bays returned to Beijing to teach another clown workshop called Discovering the Clown, which I also participated in as a student. After the class, Christopher Bays and I discussed his career in teaching theater and his philosophies on performance. There is also one description about you, say Christopher Bays is not an average Ivy League professor.
Who said that?
Well, someone said that anyway. So your training is different from other universities or what? I mean,
yeah, I'm not an academic at all. I'm a clown teacher. And my training is in the theater, and as a performer and a director, as a teacher of young artists and actors.
What's academic training about? What are they like?
You're writing papers, you're reading lots of books, you're sitting through lectures, you know what I mean? We're on our feet trying to find something beautiful and poetic and hilarious.
All right. Yeah. I just had the training course where you're the professor. We had all these training for the whole afternoon, and now we're sitting opposite each other, and now I'm the interviewer, you're the interviewee. It seems I'm now moving back to my comfort zone. But do you think it is a bad thing for an actor to be in that comfort zone?
Sometimes when we sit in our comfort zone as an actor, we stop listening, and we stop searching for perhaps what the world has to offer us today in terms of surprise. Right? We sort of said, I know how to do this. This is the part of my talent that I like. This is the part of my talent that I have confidence in. I'm not interested in that part of the talent. I think it's more interesting for an actor to be curious and perhaps make some new discoveries.
But the thing is, if you've been doing a job for decades, for over 10, 20 years, you know what this job is about. You know what you're expected. You know, when you're doing this on stage, people would expect to see things that you do, and automatically, you know, you do what you know.
Right, sure. And that's great, that's fine. I don't want people to be freaking out all the time. But in terms of being a teacher, right, and as a director of theater, but more as a teacher, my job is to perhaps find a way to help you rediscover parts of your talent that you're not so confident in. That may be a big discovery for you. Oh, maybe I didn't know. I resisted going somewhere with my talent sometimes and led more from a place of confidence, right? Then it becomes less about being curious or really listening and continuing to live in your comfort zone. So there's no surprise. I'm really interested in the surprise.
When you say curious, you want actors to be curious about what? About the stage, about themselves, about any possibilities?
Everything. About each other, about how this text works, about what the audience is receiving and giving back. What happens when the audience doesn't laugh? I'm really curious.
Are you only talking about comedies?
Not necessarily. But most of the work I do is based in the exploration of the comic world.
Yes.
Whether it's through farce or clown or commedia, whatever it is. Right.
So how different are they? I mean, an actor for a comedy comedian or an actor for
I don't know, any feature films? Or how different do you think they are in terms of the way they're supposed to be acting, say?
Well, the mediums demand different techniques. Obviously, you know, that television demands something different from film, demands something different from the stage, and the stage is full of different kinds of styles, whether you're in a Moliere, Shakespeare, Neil Simon, Noel Coward, whatever it is, it's going to demand a slightly different approach, right? But the thing that it's at the center of it is the playfulness and the pleasure of the actor.
What do you mean by playfulness?
It's a way of beginning a conversation with someone, whether it's the actor across from you, what's going on with you today, how is this scene going to work today, and what's happening triangulated with the audience. Did they laugh at that line today? Did they not? Did I do something that was different today? Because every performance is different, you know? The same way that life never repeats itself exactly. We have routines, but every day is a different day, even if you're doing the same thing. It's the same, I think, with acting, with theater. Something new is going to happen. And what is it going to be today?
It's interesting because a few months ago I was involved in theater drama. I was invited to play a role in it. That was my first. And it ran for like 10, 15 days. And, well, obviously different audiences each night. Yeah. And sometimes they found, well, these lines they would react to, but another night, probably not so much.
What's the weather like? What happened on the news today?
Even about news.
What did I eat for dinner? What did you eat for dinner? What did you not eat?
So that's all going to affect the way it's going to work on stage.
Absolutely. And it should, and that's what's interesting about it. That's what makes it so alive. And I think that's what brings people, makes them have the desire to come into the room and experience something as a group, right? It's the only experience like that.
Wait, you've also mentioned actually earlier about the relationship between the audience and the actors on the stage. You want them to be partners.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
It's not like I'm doing a show, I'm presenting a drama story to you. You sit there in the audience and then you watch what we present. But you don't think that is the way it should be?
I think that we feel the audience breathe. We feel them get bored, right? It's a living conversation. It's not an abstraction. We made something to give to them. We made it by hand. It's crafted. And we're going to give it to you. And it's important for us to acknowledge how it's received. Or feel it anyway. Right? Otherwise, it's dead.
Is it only the way with comedies, or is it also the way with, say, I don't know, Shakespeare?
There are different gradations, I think. You know, if you're doing an Arthur Miller play where there's a big fourth wall and you're talking to someone, you're still feeling them.
That's true.
Yeah.
Because you have the audience in your mind.
Yeah, it's for them. It's not for us. We've made something to be given away. Right? This is a gift we made for them. It just happens to be that there's a fourth wall. Right?
Artists, are you there to please the audience? Or are you there to express yourselves, which might not necessarily please the audience? They might not understand what I'm saying because you are not there yet to understand what I'm trying to say.
I think we can challenge an audience. I think it's kind of our responsibility and a bit of an obligation. I'm not saying we should pander. I'm saying, look what we made. It's Shakespeare. You're not going to understand the first half an hour of it, probably, until our ears adjust to it. If it's a challenging piece of avant-garde theater or experimental theater, it's still for them.
Right.
And I'm going to challenge them with that, or it's going to be political in this way, or subversive in that way, or super strange and weird, right? But we still make it for them.
Yeah,
we don't make it for us. We make it to be given away.
So the question is about leading the way, leading the audience, or respond to the audience.
I think you can do both.
There is a way.
Yeah, you can lead them and respond to them at the same time. They may be confused. Good, that's my point. My point is to confuse them for a minute so that I can bring some new idea perhaps into the room. But again, you can lead them but still make it for them. To change them, to change their mind, or to perhaps help them discover something new, understand something that perhaps is elusive.
Now, back to comedy. Well, I have also noticed actually the word you used is called commedia. Comedy, commedia, are they of any differences at all?
Well, the Commedia dell'arte was an Italian form that started in the 15th century, reached its peak in the 16th, 17th century, influenced writers like Molière and Goldoni and all of these amazing authors. It's a different form. It's a mask. It's a form played with archetype, stock characters, masks. It's comedy.
With a mask.
Yeah. It's comedy, but it's its own form.
Yeah. With or without the mask, do you think it makes any differences at all for actors on stage?
Sure, there's a different technique to learning how to play a mask. You know, it demands a bigger commitment to physicality, to vocal characterization. You know, to play a mask properly, it demands a really different set of muscles. There are also characters in the Commedia dell'arte that don't wear masks. The lovers, for instance, don't wear masks.
But it seems you have a special interest in comedies, in commedia, in clowns.
Yeah.
How did this start?
I was really, you know, I've always been really interested in the theatrical. Like, what makes something theatrical? What makes something interesting, exciting theatrically? And when I was a young actor, I was introduced to, I auditioned for a company called Theatre de la Jeune Lune in Minneapolis, right? And they were a company that came out of the Jacques Lecoq School in Paris. And they started this company that was based on the training they had gotten at the Lecoq School, and they introduced me to that. And I found it fascinating, especially the clown stuff, because it was the first time I felt complete ownership of my work, in a way. It wasn't someone else's language. I wasn't wearing someone else's clothes, right? It was my conversation with the audience, and it was prehistoric in that way. I owned it, right? And it's so rare for an actor to feel that kind of ownership, I think. We're told where to go, when to be there, how to say it, right? The actor gets bossed around so much, right? They're the last ones invited to the party. But in the world of the clown, it's just you and this beautiful group of people who've come together to have some fun. And it changed everything for me.
It's almost like the clown is the only one on that stage in the play who is really in that position to communicate directly with the audience. Well, other actors might be playing a character.
Right.
And the clown might be in the play, you know,
but also can step out of it.
But at the same time, exactly.
Right. I'm talking to you. Oh my God, what did this guy just say? Say it again. What? I don't know what to do with that. Yeah, it's so fun. It's so fun.
Is it easy to do it? To be a clown?
No. It's very difficult.
How difficult is it? And what's the most difficult part?
I think the most difficult part is allowing it to be dangerous every night. So you don't know what's going to happen, maybe. Something's going to change, right? How do you find a way to keep it fresh?
That you've rehearsed for so many times, you're now facing, well, a new audience who might not know the tricks you played the other night, and then they could still respond to the tricks you planned.
Right, sure. And but it's alive. It has to be alive every night, right? How do you keep it alive every night? Otherwise, you're just a machine. You're not a machine. You know, the audience doesn't want to see the machine. They don't want to see the lecture demo of your talent. They don't want to see the slideshow. They want to be invited. So there's an obligation there from the clown.
They seem always be that small character on the stage, sometimes neglected by people, by the audience. Sometimes they have to live behind the mask. People do not actually realize the importance of them. They're only the ones who make people laugh. Sometimes they say, well, yes, you do make us laugh, but, you know, in a cheap way.
Yeah.
Do you also get that kind of a frustration sometimes?
I think it's beautiful to see someone who's so vulnerable. Do you know, I think it's beautiful to see someone on stage who's like a skinless grape, right? Who's available to the world, but it also then means that it costs you a little bit, right? To be so open, to be so vulnerable, to be so empathetic costs you a bit, right? It's not just, hey, hoo, 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 right? It's not just a terrifying clown that laughs for no reason, but the one that's always in search of the true laugh and the pleasure for themselves with the audience. You know, and there's never a perfect show. In all the years I was an actor, I never had a perfect show. I never got the laughs exactly where I wanted them. So I was always chasing that down. I think there's a laugh there. Why am I'm getting the one before.
And didn't work.
And I'm getting the one after. And sometimes when I get that, I don't get this one. Right? So there's always places, new places to go, I think. It's really amazing that the Beijing Center for Exploration of Western Acting Art brought me all this way to investigate what the clown means culturally here as well. Last year was the first year they brought me.
Okay. How was last year's?
It was great. It was so fun. The students were amazing.
Wait, any surprises?
There's always surprises.
Which might be?
People growing. People surprising themselves. People being moved when they're watching comedy. That's the beautiful thing about the clown. Is sometimes when we see someone watch the clown, there's something so beautiful and innocent and open and naive and childlike that we're reminded of those qualities in ourselves. And it can be very moving to say, that's what I gave up in order to do this.
This is the interesting part, because you kept saying you hope people can find their own talent, which might be surprising themselves.
Yeah.
The qualities they didn't realize before.
Yeah.
How can that be? I mean, we're supposed to be the ones who know ourselves the best.
We're supposed to be. It's not always the case. You know, sometimes I think there's always things to discover in your work. There's always things to discover in yourself.
You're talking about the technique side, or?
I'm talking about everything. About your growth as a human being. Your growth as a human being directly affects your growth as an artist. And so if you're making discoveries, I didn't know that I was capable of that. I didn't know that that was possible, right? I always avoided that. But maybe that's a gold mine. Maybe the thing that you avoid is based on fear, right? And if you begin to learn to not lead with your fear, but lead with your hope, other things become possible. You make bigger discoveries. I can let that go now. I don't have to be ashamed of that quality in myself, but actually celebrate it as a really strong part of my talent.
This afternoon during the training, when you asked us to lie down, to laugh for a while, and then you said, it's okay if you want to cry.
Yeah, there's always people who need to release some toxic stuff that they've been carrying in order to get at something more simple.
Does it require an actor, potential actor, to be, I don't know, freed in that way to be a good actor?
Not necessarily, but if you avoid it, if you're consciously avoiding that,
control it? No.
Then you're trying to control something that's wild, that's human, that's about being available, about being vulnerable, right? And one of the most beautiful qualities, I think, we have as actors is that kind of vulnerability, to be able to listen, to be empathetic, right? And if you avoid that because you feel it's a place of shame or humiliation, you're missing a whole part of the story. You know, I feel like the actor is the illuminator of the great theatrical texts of history, right? The great texts of the world, right? And in order to be able to illuminate those great texts, they need to have a really strong sense of self, right? And not just the part, again, not just the part of themselves that they like, and not just the part of themselves that has given them success, or that they have confidence in, but all of it, right? And I'm really interested in what's behind the billboard, what's being held back, right? And that's the place of growth. It's not necessarily a destination, but that's where you're going to grow the most.
It's about empathy. It's about how to put yourself in the shoes of that character, do things what that character is supposed to do, to think, to say, to feel. How to achieve that the best?
Practice. You know, I think the life of an artist is a practice, right? The way yoga is a practice. The way going to the gym is a practice. You're never done, right? You have to keep going. You have to keep going to the gym. You're never done with yoga. And I think the life of an artist is also in a practice in that way. And you need to continue to be curious. Say, I'm getting stuck here now. What is it? How do I get to this thing? How do I unleash this? Or how do I rely on technique to get me through this moment in hopefully a truthful way? And this is just from my life as an actor, very personally. One of the biggest things I realized at a certain point is in order for me to be able to listen and be present in the moment.
Truly listen to what they're saying.
Truly listen, no matter if you've heard it 30 times. How do you find a way to forget that you ever rehearsed? Your body's going to know what to do. That's why you rehearse for 4 weeks or 5 weeks. So you have kind of muscle memory. I need to walk over here now. I need to pick this up. Oh, I'm going to pick up and make a phone call. You know how to do that. How do you find a way to do it freshly every performance? You can't. There's technique behind it as well. But if you can at least try to encourage yourself to listen very closely and try to forget you know so much. Forget that you know what you're going to say next. It's terrifying as an actor.
Yeah, if you forget your lines, that's a disaster.
But you're not going to, probably. You're probably not going to. You may every once in a while, and that's what makes theater interesting. It's super dangerous that way, right? And the audience knows that, and that's what they come for. That's why the audiences come more for the first preview, because they kind of want to see the car crash.
Right.
Maybe they don't really articulate it in that way, but they know that the theater itself is a dangerous thing. The set could break. Somebody could forget their lines, right? A light can fall from the ceiling. It happens, and the audiences love it. Yeah, that's what makes it alive. That's why I'm not watching a movie. It's about the conversation that the theater is, that the live theater is. Yeah. We breathe together.
When some of us were actually presenting something in front of us and we thought it was the end, but actually didn't say anything and kept pushing us, and then something new came out.
Yeah.
When we thought that was the end, and then after that, something came out.
Yeah.
So it's only good for training, right? But not for the real acting, a real performance on stage. I don't know.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
It
depends on what kind of theater you're making. You know, if we have just an idea that it's got to be this kind of realistic theater, and Shakespeare's not allowed to do this, or Molière can't do that, right? Then we're blocking all kinds of possibility of what can happen between an actor and the audience. Or if the director has a sense of how that can work also, you can make a different kind of theater. There's lots of different kinds of theater, you know. There's some that's super boring, that are perhaps is more psychological and realistic. Some people love that. Some people really, really love that. But I still think there's a need for you to be alive in that.
So that's the key point. You kept actually mentioning this word, would be being alive, to try to break the boundaries, find the surprises, to reach out the possible zones, actually, on the stage.
Yeah. And also, I think, like what we even found today, is you guys were able to do things that you perhaps never expected to be possible. After pushing so hard through this big, even whether it was synthetic laughter or whether it was acting laughter, whatever it was, on the other side of that, you primed the muscle so much that something poetic begins to happen between people. It's amazing theater to watch.
Do you still act a lot now these days?
I don't act anymore.
You don't?
No.
But you started as an actor.
Yes, I did. I was an actor professionally for about 20 years.
Yeah, so you found more interest in directing or in teaching?
I think I became a different kind of artist at a certain point. Do you know what I mean? I started to want to become the painter more than the paint.
The one in control, you mean?
I had some things that I wanted to do as a theater person that I wasn't able to do as an actor. It was just a different muscle. And at a certain point, I just became a different kind of artist. Right? Not so much about control, because the plays that I direct, I give my actors huge amounts of freedom. I give them the freedom to improvise every night at certain places. There's certain places that we call jazz moments, where we know what the melody is. And now here, That's your solo. What are you going to do tonight? What happened in the news today? What's going on in the world today? What's the weather like? How's the traffic? Right?
Everything.
And that's what keeps it alive, because the other actors don't know what's going to happen there. So their radar is just a little bit brighter. Okay? What's that guy going to do tonight? Or what am I going to do in response to what that guy did? You don't know. So the whole world is a little bit more alive.
My master is a gentleman from Torino. His name is Federico Rasponi. He's waiting outside. He'd like to come in. And I am to wait for an answer.
Who are you? Talk to me.
Well, you can talk, you can talk. You can bicker, you can talk.
You can talk, talk, talk.
You can bicker, bicker, bicker.
But you gotta know the territory.
I've got to know the territory.
Well, you white girls all beat and everything.
As a teacher
who are you?
in Yale and also in Julliard for 25 years.
At Julliard, yeah.
So when is the moment when you felt the biggest, I don't know, accomplishment, say?
As a teacher?
Yeah?
I have them all the time. When someone has a breakthrough.
Your students?
Yeah. Yeah. When someone has a breakthrough, it's a big one for me. My great pleasure comes from watching someone step into their body in a new way, or begin to have confidence in themselves in a new way, rediscover or reclaim part of their physicality, or how their voice connects to something, right? And so I have those all the time, because I push really hard, you know? And like I said today, I want you to be more ambitious than I am for you, but I'm very ambitious for you. Sometimes I can see something in someone that may be very elusive for them, but if I can find a way to track it down and get a hold of it, then this person is going to change in a beautiful way and carry that with them forever. And that's the great pleasure of teaching.
It gets more generous here in the comic space.
Repetition is sort of the death of the artist at a certain point, I think.
How'd you avoid that?
Again, I think, you know, it's sort of the nature, but we were talking about the clown earlier. You have to stay alive, to stay curious, to do something slightly different every night, to dedicate the show to someone who's in the audience that night, a friend of yours or whatever. You know, that's what I used to do as an actor. I'm going to dedicate my show to this person. I'm going to play the show for that person.
For you, because we can't see
So
you as well.
if we come back to the key message you've included in your words, it would be, the first one would be playfulness.
Yes.
To build up the partnership with the audience.
Yeah. To be curious about that.
To be curious.
And to always lead with your hope.
Lead with it.
Lead with the hope that today is going to be an amazing day. What does the world have to offer you today?
That's what's required of a good actor.
I think so.
But thank you very much for your time and for
It's my pleasure.
telling me all the tricks, you know, to... All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.